Hello, everyone, and welcome to our study of Luke 21. On my community tab, I included a video yesterday. I reposted a video yesterday that I did explaining the similarity that is Matthew 24, 29, and 30 with Luke 21, 25 through 27. They're the same thing. And so as we make our way through this video, I will go through that again. But it is easier to tell you that ahead of time, because if you think there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, has anything to do with this age or this dispensation or the church at all, then I would say, please stop watching this, go watch that, and then come back to this. Because it's very easily ascertained that that is linked to Matthew 24, 29. So right off the bat, I will say that I understand that this chapter has led to, or people's interpretation of this chapter, because let's not put the fault with the Bible, okay? Let's put it on our own interpretation. So there has been a propensity, probably greater with Luke 21 than with Matthew 24, to misinterpret the heck out of this. Hopefully after this video, I will have put to rest many of those things. But I do understand that, there is a certain level of care that we have to handle this with, because there is so much lack of clarity about certain things here. But hopefully by the end of this, we will have that resolved, and you guys can march along on your way, understanding this has nothing to do with us, and it never did. Hi, Megan. Nice to see you. What I want to do specifically with this is, as the title suggests, highlight the similarities and the differences with Matthew 24, because hopefully we understand that these are synoptic gospels. So there will be similarity in them. There will also be differences in them. But when we go through what the differences are, there is a reason already established in the book of Luke for those differences. And so I will want to revisit and highlight that. Because primarily, not totally, but primarily, there is a different message being conveyed to Israel with this. So if you weren't aware of that, we will go through it. But then obviously there are significant similarities with the Olivet Discourse from Matthew 24, and we'll go through those too. So without further ado, triumphal entry was in Luke 19, and it is in that chapter where we set up for much of what Luke 21 is actually about, 70 AD. I have a little chart that I'm going to reshare later, but I want to get some mental juices flowing now, so that when we get there, if you didn't know that, I will show you what I mean. So I'm sharing this, and hopefully it won't take too long to come up. There we go. Didn't take hardly any time at all. Woohoo, Jesus loves me. All right. So this is where we're going to ultimately wind up going in Luke 21, is linking it to Daniel 9, 26, and 27. Matthew 24, except for the first two verses, which actually do relate to 70 AD. Jesus taking them out of the temple and them saying, hey, look at how great and big the structures are. And he said, yeah, there's not going to be any left of that, because they're all going to be thrown down. That was the reference to 70 AD. And then he goes into talking about the 70th week, seals midpoint of the week with the preaching of the everlasting gospel at trumpet 7, the abomination of desolation, also midpoint. And then through the end, the Revelation 13, beast and false prophet rising, and then the glorious appearing. So we should know that Matthew 24 is 70th week specific. And what many people have done, because of similar language, is link Luke 21 to the 70th week also. And it's not. It's actually tied to 70 AD. And it has more to do with the Daniel 9:26 side of that the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end thereof shall be with the flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. That's clarified in Luke 21, that the end of the war desolations are determined is the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled. That from the 70 AD till the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled, which, yes, is also linked to the fullness of the Gentiles. Because remember in Revelation 11, he was told not to measure the outer court, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. So the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled and the fullness of the Gentiles relates to the end of the 70th week. And that's what Luke 21 is talking about. From 70 AD to the very end, these things will occur. And then it goes into the signs of Jesus' coming and of the end of the world. But primarily, it starts with talk of the seals. Like I said, we'll go through all of this, but I'm setting this up in case you didn't know this. In case you did not know this, we're going to outline it quickly, very succinctly, show the differences between Luke 21 and Matthew 24, how they actually start in the same place, then they diverge, and then they come back to the same place. So if you weren't aware of this, this is truly where we're going to wind up going with this. But I wanted to start that off the bat so that you can study that on your own if you weren't familiar, or study alongside, or just have that mental picture in your head now so that when we go through it, you're like, oh, that's what she was talking about. Hi, Brooke. Hi, Tara. Oh, hi, Elizabeth. Nice to see you, ladies. So having said that, let's start with Luke 21. He looked up and saw the rich men casting their gifts into the sanctuary, and he saw also a certain poor widow casting in thither 2 mites. And he said, of a truth, I say unto you that this poor widow hath cast in more than they all. For all these have their abundance cast in unto offerings to God. But she, of her penury or her poverty, her livelihood, had cast in all her living that she had. So it was more valuable to give all of what you had, even if that was like nothing, because it's given in faith rather than just, it's the value ascribed to that which is a limited resource. Money is a limited resource. If it's not limited and you give a little of it, then it hasn't injured you or made you any less well off than you already were. It's like somebody who has a packed schedule. They work 12 hours a day and they have a family. Them giving like a little bit of their time to help somebody else is more meaningful than somebody who doesn't have a job. And they spend like 6 hours a day. But they have that time. It's not taking anything away from what they could. It's not a limited resource. If you have a lot of it, it's not a limited resource. Where if you have little of it, it is a limited resource. It's more valuable, more meaningful if you give of it to other. And that is what he's talking about. Not that giving is ever wrong, but limited resources is the point that he's making there. Verse 5. And some spake of the temple and how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts. So let's actually bring up Matthew 24 because we're going to reference it. He said, as for these things which ye behold, the days will come in the which there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Exactly what he started off in Matthew 24 talking about. Jesus went out and departed from the temple. His disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. So that is a reference to 70 AD. We're going to come back to that in Luke 21. So yes, we see that there's a reference to it starting off in Luke 21 and Matthew 24. There's a similarity. And then also there is continued similarity. So Matthew 24. I'm going back to this because people are probably more familiar with Matthew 24, the layout of this. So for comparison, it's easy. Verse 3, he sat upon the Mount of Olives. The disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Jesus answered and said, take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, shall deceive many. There's seal 1. You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you not be troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet, for nation shall rise against nation. There's seal 2. There shall be famine, seal 3, and pestilences, seal 4, and earthquakes in diverse places, seal 6. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Okay, we will see the same thing here in Luke 21. Verse 7. They asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what will there be when these things shall come to pass? Now, there are 2 different questions in view. In Matthew 24, they come to him privately asking, what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So he's 70th week specific. Seals, trumpet, midpoint, abomination, desolation, rise of the beast and false prophet, second coming. Very specifically, the question asked is related to the signs of his coming and of the end of the world. That is not the question asked in Luke 21. Verse 6, as for these things which ye behold, the days will come in the which there shall not be left thee one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. 70 AD. And they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be, and what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass? They're asking him about when the temple is going to be thrown down, and one stone will not be left upon another. Luke 21's context is 70 AD specific because that is what they're asking him about. They are not asking him about the sign of his coming and of the end of the world. He said there's going to come a day in which these stones will not be left one upon another, that will not be thrown down. When's that going to happen? So right off the bat, verses 6 and 7 in Luke 21 are not the same as verse 3 and the question they ask in Matthew 24. That is why we established the context for Luke is going to diverge from Matthew 24. It doesn't do that immediately because he does talk about these seals. And he says, take heed that ye be not deceived, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and the time draweth near. Go ye not therefore after them. When ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must come to pass, but the end is not by and by. So that's seals 1 and 2. Then he said, nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and great earthquakes shall be in diverse places, and famines and pestilence, and fearful sights and great signs there shall be from heaven. Okay, but I thought you said he's going to talk to them about 70 AD. Yeah, here's where we get there. But before all these, so he does start talking about the seals in comparison to Matthew 24. But that's not the crux of this. The crux of this is answering when shall 70 AD come to pass? What are the signs that 70 AD is going to come to pass? As for these things which ye behold, for the days will come in the which there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Why is it so important that Luke 21 focus on 70 AD? Because Luke 19, Luke at all, but Luke 19 is specific and different as a curse poured upon Israel, if you want to call it that. One of the outcomes of them not going into the kingdom, them failing to accept the king coming to bring the kingdom was delayed, taken off of the table, the curse of the fig tree, the blindness cast over Israel, the delay of the kingdom, the going to the cross and inviting Gentiles in to participate under a new covenant, that the kingdom would be taken from them, given to a nation, bringing forth the fruits thereof. 70 AD was prophesied. Luke is the only gospel which really talks about 70 AD in great detail. Yes, the other ones talk about how the days will come and they lose their temple and there be not one stone left upon another. Like I said, Matthew 23, verse 37, which leads into chapter 24. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often I would have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chicken under her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth till you shall say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. And then Jesus went out, departed from the temple, and his disciples came for to show him the buildings of the temple. And he said, see not all these things, verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. So he did prophesy that in at least one other gospel. But the specific reasoning why that was prophesied against Israel is given in Luke 19. After the triumphal entry, Jesus, when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it, saying, if thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace being synonymous in this context with kingdom, but now they are hid from thine eyes. For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee, shall compass thee round, and keep thee on every side. They shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. So Luke 21, they're asking what are going to be the signs that event is come upon them. And that is what he is going to answer in these next verses. So yes, he does talk about the seals related to the 70th week. However, that's not the crux of this chapter. The crux of this chapter is related to 70 AD and the signs that they know that event is upon them, which was prophesied in chapter 19 and fulfilled. Well, it was fulfilled in 70 AD, but the prophecy about that, specifically what that's going to look like, is given in Luke 21. So after talking about seals 1 through 6, he backs off of the 70th week and he goes back to 70 AD. So what I'm going to do is share that on my screen again. And while I'm reading through this, I will read through it all the way, and then I will come back to it. So hopefully you guys can see that, or it will pop up on the screen while I'm reading. But before all these, so before the 70th week commences, and to answer the specific question that they asked him in verse 7, Master, but when shall these things be, and what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass? Before all these things, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And it shall be to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate before what ye answer, for I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. Ye shall be betrayed by both parents and brethren and kinsfolk and friends, and some of you they shall cause to be put to death. You shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. This relates to what he was telling him in Matthew 10, if you were curious. But there shall not an hair of your head perish. In your patience possess ye your souls. Here's the specific answer about 70 AD. When ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, you shall know that the desolation thereof is nigh. This is not the same thing as the when ye shall therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth let him understand. This is when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, know that the desolation thereof is nigh. This relates to the armies of Titus Vespasian, who sacked Jerusalem and destroyed the temple. So there was not one stone upon another that was not thrown down from it like Jesus prophesied. This is 70 AD. Simply because the language is similar to Matthew 24 does not mean it is the same. This is the Daniel 9:26. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. The first of which was 70 AD, the second of which is the midpoint of the 70th week. Unto the end is the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled, i.e. the fullness of the Gentiles. Those are synonymous terms. So, continuing on. When ye shall see Jerusalem compassed about with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let them which are in the midst of it depart out. And let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, and all things written might be fulfilled. The days of vengeance. Yes. Specifically, where he was pronouncing woes upon the religious leaders, saying, Behold, your house is left unto you desolate, and you're not going to see me again until you say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. The woes that he pronounced upon the religious leaders included the losing of their temple in Matthew 23. And the woes pronounced upon them were, For the days shall come upon thee that an enemy shall cast a trench about thee, compass thee round, and keep thee in on every side, shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. The days of vengeance. It was one of the, I want to say curses, but one of the bad things that happened to Israel, because they forsook their Messiah when he came to present the kingdom, didn't want to go into it, remained under the curse of the law of sin and death, and they lost a whole lot as a result. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written might be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. They shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And this is where we come to this. Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And we know that includes through the end of the 70th week, because John was told not to measure the outer court of the temple in Revelation 11. There was given me a reed like unto a rod. The angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar, them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. So we know based on that in Revelation, and that the Gentiles will be treading over Jerusalem in the second half of the 70th week, that the times of the Gentiles and the fullness of the Gentiles will not end until the end of the 70th week. So this is why I say Luke 21 is Daniel 9:26 from 70 AD, which is the first of the desolations prophesied, the second of which is the midpoint of the 70th week. but both of those occur prior to the end of the times of the Gentiles, or the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled. And the fullness of the Gentiles, for anyone who is unsure about that, is a reference to Gentile wickedness filled to capacity, thrown into the great press and stomped. The fullness of the Gentiles is not Gentile salvation, it's Gentile judgment. And Joel 3 is the chapter where that is discussed. So this is really how this lays out. Matthew 24, the first 2 verses are 70 AD specific, and then it's all 70th week, up to and including the second coming, and then parables about the 2 specific groups of people that will exist at Jesus' second coming, believers and unbelievers. So we'll talk more about that part a little bit later in Luke 21, because it does teach the same parables, at least in part. Luke 17 contains some of them, and Luke 21 contains others. So there are 2 groups of people who will exist at Jesus' second coming when the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled and when the fullness of the Gentiles is fulfilled. And that's believers and unbelievers. Unbelievers are thrown into they're the tares, the wheat and the tares. If you're talking about harvest typologies related to Israel, it's the wheat and the tares. So Israel, the wheat or the righteous, will go into the kingdom. That's talking about the remnant in their natural bodies, and the tares are gathered out of the kingdom because they offend, and them which do iniquity, and they're cast into outer darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. But related to Gentiles, it's the grape harvest. So you have the main harvest of Gentiles, which is tossed in the winepress and trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horse's bridle, the space of 1,600 furlongs. And then you also have gleaning grapes, which are fruitful and righteous, and they'll go into the kingdom also. But this is Luke 21, 70 AD until the very end, second coming, which is the fulfillment of the times of the Gentiles and the fullness of the Gentiles also. In contrast to Matthew 24, which is 70th week specific, which then also would lead you to the second coming, which again is synonymous with the times of the Gentiles being fulfilled and the fullness of the Gentiles. So hopefully we can see the differences and the similarities between the 2. There is a little bit of overlap, but for the most part, Daniel 9:26 is found in Luke 21. Then Daniel 9:26 says, again, the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. You shall see Jerusalem compassed about with armies, and you know the desolation thereof is nigh. Desolations, multiple, are determined. So 1 there, and then 1 in the 70th week. So if you guys have more questions about this, please let me know. But I just put this together very briefly to show you guys how, yes, there are similarities, but for the most part, they're different. However, they both lead you to the same endpoint, which is the second coming of Jesus Christ, which is what the rest of this chapter is going to talk about, is the second coming of Jesus Christ. So really, we can kind of, maybe I'll just do this. Hide. So this is what we are looking at, and this is not that. This is the second coming. These are all synonymous terms. So let's just bring that down. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that on my screen. Hi, Thomas. Nice to see you. I'm going to leave that on my screen because the rest of this is, he said, it's going to continue from 70 AD. These be the days of vengeance. They shall fall by the edge of the sword, be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So from Luke 21, from Luke 21, 70 AD, when that first occurs, it shall occur until the second coming of Jesus Christ, which again, this is specifically what these last verses talk about, is the second coming of Jesus Christ. There shall be signs in the sun, moon, and stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the cloud of heaven with power and great glory. I guess I probably don't need to leave this on my screen because there's one other thing that I do want to share. And this is why I said at the very beginning of this video, if you guys did not watch I'm not going to. I'm just going to refer you to the other video that I referred you to at the very beginning of this video. It's on my community tab, and it's talking about end times Bible study. using the term sun, moon, and stars and putting them next to each other, Luke 21, 25 through 27, and Matthew 24, 29 and 30, they are the same thing. I don't know why people pull Luke 21, 25 out and say that it's not talking about the second coming or that it's talking about anything other than the second coming, because the sister passage to that is Matthew 24, 29, which says immediately after the tribulation of those days. The signs in the sun, moon, and stars are listed as immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. So that, I mean, it's the same verses. I don't know why there is discrepancy, or some would say there's discrepancy, but those are the same verses. So I'm just going to refer you to that other video where I already talked about this. Hopefully you already know they're the same. And if you don't, watch that and you will understand very readily they are the same. You will also understand very readily that the signs in the sun, moon, and stars with the withdrawing of the light and the refusing to shine and all of that are also discussed in OT prophets, Isaiah 13, Joel 2, and Joel 3. And they are related to the Lord roaring out of Zion. So I'm not going to go through that anymore because, like I said, I threw up another video. I shared my other video about that. So if you have questions, watch that, and you will have questions no longer. Continuing on. When these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard this apply to the church and why we should be so rapture focused and looking at the sky continually. No, 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 no. The signs in this chapter were related to 70 AD and to the second coming, neither of which have anything to do with the church. Even though 70 AD occurred within the present dispensation, the church age, it still had nothing to do with the church. It had to do with Israel, the fulfillment of a prophecy against Israel given during the 4 days between the triumphal entry and the cross, still under Old Covenant. So it might have been fulfilled in the present dispensation, but it still never had anything to do with the church. The signs in this chapter are related specifically and solely to the second coming. Yes. And the seals in the 70th week. So 70th week, second coming, and 70 AD. We are outside the scope of any of those, which means they have nothing to do with us. He spake to them a parable. Behold a fig tree with all the trees. Okay. I got a question about this as recently as like 2 days ago on the heels of the video that I did related to the timeline to the end times, 70 days to 70 Jubilee years and 80 years to flight/dividing of land. I got a question about the 70 and 80 with regard to the parable of the fig tree, which undoubtedly I always get, but it's so taken out of context. The fig tree is a representation of national Israel. No one's disputing that. And if they are, please don't, because the fig tree is representative of national Israel. There was a curse poured upon it for not bearing fruit, one of the outcomes of the triumphal entry. Jesus hungered the next day when they were coming back into Jerusalem, and he saw a fig tree with nothing but leaves, and he cursed it for not bearing fruit. The fig tree is representative of national Israel. There was no faith found, thus they didn't go into the kingdom. He delayed the kingdom to a second coming and said it's going to be given to a nation bringing forth the fruit thereof, because no fruit was found. Fruit is akin to faith. So the cursing of the fig tree occurred the day after the triumphal entry. Blindness was cast over them. 70 AD was prophesied. The kingdom taken off the table and given to us in the interim after he went to the cross, of course. And then in Joel 2, the contrast of that is the fig tree shall bring forth her fruit at the second coming when faith is found, when Israel believes on the Lord Jesus Christ and is saved spiritually immediately before he comes back to deliver them physically. But that's found in Joel 2:21. Yeah. The Lord's going to be jealous for his land, pity his people, destroy the beast and his army, remove the northern army far off. Fear not, O land, be glad and rejoice, for the Lord will do great things. Be not afraid, ye beasts of the field, for the pastures of the wilderness do spring, for the tree beareth her fruit, the fig tree and the vine do yield their strength. So the casting of blindness, the cursing of the fig tree, for their willful choice to remain under the law of sin and death rather than to go into the kingdom with their Messiah. So they got cursed for that. is lifted when they believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and are saved, and the fig tree bears her fruit. The fig tree bearing her fruit is a second coming event. However, this is where we also bear similarity with Matthew 24, the parable of the fig tree. The parable of the fig tree is a teaching with a spiritual truth. It says, when you see this, it's a sign for this. So likewise, when you see this, it's a sign for this. It has nothing to do with the 70 or the 80, which people say, oh, a generation is that, and Israel has been in existence for this amount of time, so the 70 or 80 must relate to their lifespan and whatever. No, it's simply using something that they would be familiar with to teach a truth. Behold the parable of the fig tree. When they shoot forth, you see and know that your own selves that summer is now nigh. This is more clear in Matthew 24. Now learn the parable of the fig tree. When its branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. Because it's going to put forth leaves when it's getting ready to grow and bear fruit. So if you're looking for the fruit bearing and that occurs in summer, then you know that the shooting forth leaves is on the way to summer. It's a sign on the way to your desired end point. So now learn the parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender, putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door. Which means that the context of the chapter are signs for the end point. What is the end point? When you shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So when you see the signs that lead up to that, which are specifically 70th week specific, and that's why he started this talking about the seals. Because the seals, the opening of the seals are the beginning of sorrows, and they're the first indication that he's coming back, because there's a day count attached to it. So when you know that the 70th week has commenced by the opening of the seals, you know there's a day count to the arrival of the Messiah. So if the beginning is the branch putting forth leaves, and the end is Jesus, you know that summer is nigh, because he's coming back, because there's a day count. So just like there is a growing season, which says, oh, when I see this, I know it's time to plant, or when I see this, I know it's time to harvest. Or when I see this, I know that it's 3 months from bearing leaves to bearing fruit or something like that. So it's a sign-based thing, and it's based on the 70th week specifically, the seals. Once those are open, your day count to the arrival of the Messiah has begun. So in the parable of the fig tree, when the seals begin, the arrival of the Messiah, you'll see him coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory 2,520 days later. So likewise, when you see all these things come to pass, know that the kingdom of God is very nigh, or the kingdom of God is nigh at hand. Yes, because there's a day count attached to the 70th week. So again, that's why he started with the seals. Even though the 70th week is not specifically in view for the majority of this, it's 70 AD until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. But when the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled, that's when Jesus returns at the second coming. So he starts talking with Jesus starts talking about the seals, backs off into 70 AD. But the reason he started with the seals is because those are the day count to the arrival of the Messiah, which is what the chapter ends with. So when you see the 70th week commence, Jesus is coming back. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass away till all be fulfilled. This meaning the terminal generation. The one who sees the opening of the seals is the one who's going to see the arrival of Jesus Christ. The remnant. The final generation is not the one who saw Israel in 1948. My guess is the majority of those people aren't even alive anymore. The final generation is the one who sees the commencement of the 70th week up to and including the second coming of Jesus Christ 2,520 days later. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. Take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, so that the day come upon you unawares. Well, that would be a reference to the unsaved who don't care. So yes, clearly they're going to be caught unaware. For as a snare shall it come on them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch ye therefore and pray always that it may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. That's a reference to the remnant. That is a reference to the remnant. Watch ye therefore and pray always. So that is a reference to at its core, it's going to be a reference to the midpoint of the 70th week. Because what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? When ye shall therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. Remember that these are a reference to Daniel 9:26 and 27. What does he say in Daniel 9:26? That the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end thereof shall be with a flood, and under the end of the word desolations, multiple are determined. The first of which was then. The second is the midpoint of the 70th week. So that's going to be a sign. When you shall therefore see it, flee. And those are the people that Daniel 12 says, at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone whose names shall be found written in the book. The watch ye therefore and pray always that you may be counted worthy to escape and to stand before the Son of Man, is watch for the sign to get out of there so that when he comes back, you're alive on earth to see it and you're going into the kingdom in your natural body. Again, it has nothing to do with us. And in the daytime, he was teaching in the temple, and at night he went out and abode in the mount that is called the Mount of Olives, and all the people came early in the morning to him in the temple to hear him. Yep, it would have been pretty awesome to see Jesus teaching. Yes, it would have. So, hi, Rockhound. Hi, Kevin. Nice to see both of you. So, if you guys have any questions about this, please let me know. But hopefully that little chart that I put up helps you guys understand the similarities and differences, and really what's at the core of Luke 21 is 70 AD. It obviously does have 70th week implications also with regard to the desolations. Specifically, there's going to be a tie to the desolations, the first of which was 70 AD, and then there's also going to be a reference to the second one, because that's what's eventually going to save them and get them standing before the Son of Man when he returns at the second coming, which is why they're told to watch, because there's going to be a sign related to it. Yes, when ye shall therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. The second one of two from Daniel 9:26. So I know I threw a lot at you guys, but hopefully you all already know this. And it was just a refresher. But if you have any questions, please let me know. Hi, Last Days Christians. Nice to see you. If you have any questions, let me know. And we will be finishing the book of Luke not in a very not distant future. So stay tuned for more, and I'll see you guys later. Have a good day.